Moses. Moses.
I'm here.
I am the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and Jacob.
You are real.
I am. I have seen the misery of my people. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring them out of Egypt.
How can I set them free?
I will be with you.
God has such a smoothing voice in the movies, doesn't he? So, hey, good morning, Lake Forest. My name is Mitch. If I've not gotten to meet you, I'm one of the pastors here, and we're changing things up a little bit, bringing a sermon right here at the beginning so we can participate in communion together. And this is kind of where our story and our series, Change is Coming, begins. It begins with this story of Moses and God having this interaction in front of this bush that seems to be on fire, but yet it's not consumed. For those of you who are joining us for the first time this year in this series, we are tracking Moses and the people of Israel in the book of Exodus, and we're looking specifically at the first 18 chapters. And so if you have a Bible, you want to turn in there, that's part of the place we're going to be this morning. The Israelites, let me catch you up though in some of the story. The Israelites, they are God's people. These are God's children that his hand is on, and they are in slavery in Egypt. And all they're doing is making bricks for the Pharaoh there in Egypt. And day after day, they're making these bricks. And over the past 2 weeks, we, as Lake Forest, have been talking about how we're like the Israelites, that sometimes in our life we're stuck. We're stuck in the same thing over and over, making bricks. And the bricks really symbolize things that we seem to be enslaved to, things that we can't let go of. Last week, we began to talk about how to maneuver when we finally make the decision to let go of this brick and let change come into our lives. And so last week, we really looked at how do we maneuver now through this change, especially when God has said to Moses, just like he says to us, I want to take you to a promised land. I want to remove all the misery. I want to move you to a greater place in life. So now, last week we talked about how do we maneuver after we made this change. Okay, I'm finally going to let go of my brick. But yet we're not in the promised land yet. That tension, that place in between. The time between deciding for my marriage that I'm going to get counseling. And we're going to start counseling, but yet things in the household seem to be the same. We're not yet there. The time in between where I decide this year that I'm going to lose 20 pounds or I'm going to let go of this addiction. But yet, you're not at the place where all 20 pounds are gone, and yet the urge of picking up that bottle is still not yet gone. Maneuvering through those kinds of things. Talking about how to survive and navigate during a time that we're just not quite there yet, but yet we don't want to turn around and go backwards. And up to this point, we've been looking at the Israelites. We've been comparing their situation to our own. And sometimes we find that it's just really, really hard to change. No matter how much you know this thing needs to change in my life, no matter how much you know it should change, how much you know that it's going to be great when it does change, sometimes change is just really, really hard. But we've been encouraging each other out of a Philippians passage. Philippians 1:6. It says, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. We've been looking at this and placing our trust that God is going to continue to do a great thing in me. So today, we're going to change gears a little bit in this story. Up until this point, we've been looking at the Israelites. Today, we're going to look at Moses. We're going to look just at Moses today and his interaction with God. Now, it's interesting, the last couple of weeks, Mike, our lead pastor, Mike Moses, he's been preaching on the Israelites. See, it'd be kind of weird if Mike Moses were preaching on Moses. If he were doing that, you guys think, that guy's just bragging about himself, or he's just tearing himself down over and over. But if I preach on it, you think, well, there's typical Mitch, he's just picking on Mike again. That'd be proper thinking, and that's exactly what will be happening some today. But it's way more fun for me to preach on Moses than for Mike. Especially when I get to places in the sermon where you hear me say things like, you know, that Moses, good leader, but that guy complains all the time, you know? Or that Moses, he sure didn't have a lot of confidence. Or that Moses, he better be glad that God gave him a partner. He'd have never made it through all of this. You see, I can get away with stuff like that today without losing my job, because that's who that Moses of the Bible really was. And so today, we're going to talk about Moses, the one of the Bible, just to be clear, okay? That's who we're going to talk about today. And we're going to ask this question. What if God were to invite you to lead somebody, some organization, a family, or relationship? He were to invite you to lead them through a change in their life. What happens if God invites you this year to lead someone else in change? The same way that God says to Moses, you're the one that I'm going to use to bring change in the life of the Israelites. You see, I'm not a prophet, but I want to forecast something for you that I predict will happen in the year 2014. What I know for sure is that someone around you, someone close to you, an organization that you're a part of, a family that you're connected with, or your own family, sometime in the year 2014, someone close to you will go through a drastic change in their life. More specific, God Himself will cause this change in their life. Now, I also believe there is a 99% chance that God is going to invite you to help lead someone through one of these changes. He's going to invite you, a 99% chance that God is going to invite you to lead someone, a company, an organization, or something around you that's close to you. He's going to invite you to lead them through that change. Now, some of you in this room, you just perked up because you're a leader. You're excited about the thought that, yeah, I'm ready to bring some change. You might even be a CEO of a company, and you're going, that's right. That's affirmation, because I'm about to lead us through a change. It could be that you're the boss of some folks, and you've committed this year, there are going to be some changes around here. You're a teacher of a class, and you're going to change students' learning habits. Or you're an office manager, and you're going to change the efficiency of the office. Or you're the head of a household, and this year, you're going to change the way the family communicates, the way they spend money, and the amount of TV time that they're watching. And you get excited because you're a leader. And you go, man, I'm excited about doing that. So yeah, Mitch, I'm one of those 99%. Now, there's some of you as well in this room that you've just checked out on me. You heard the word leader. You heard the word 99%. And you said, that's not me. He's not talking to me. I'm not a leader. And so when you hear this 99%, I'm the 1%, and you want to check out of the sermon. When you hear there's a 99% chance that God's going to ask you to lead someone in a change, you go, so I have a chance that it's not going to be me. And you focus in on the 1%, and that's who I am. So let me tell you, in this room, 99% of you are one of these leaders that I talked about, and you're going to lead somebody through change. Or you're the parent that has a child that's going to need you to lead them through a change this year. Or you have a friend that's going to need you to lead them through a crisis. Or you are married to a spouse that is God's going to use you to guide them in how to better communicate with you. Or you are a single parent and you're going to have to encourage your children through a financial change this year. Or you have a college roommate or a brother or a sister that's going to need you to walk in front of them as they let go of an addiction or as they change the whole way that they relate to you. Or you have a neighbor that's going to choose for the first time to follow Jesus this year, and God's going to invite you to lead them into that decision to follow Christ, and He's going to invite you to lead them as they begin a journey. Or you're a person in this room who's just going to be invited by God to lead another person who's going to lead someone in change. Now, if none of those situations apply to you, you are the 1% that God is going to make a huge change in your life. And you're going to need the other 99% of us to help you walk through that. So you still need to pay attention to this sermon because I'm talking with you. Now, for those of you who immediately said, I'm not a leader, he's not talking about me, you actually have a lot in common with Moses. I want you to hear some of this story from the scriptures. I want you to hear some of what Moses responds, the way he responds to God after God says to him, you're going to lead these people. So here's Exodus 3, verse 11. Moses replies to God, who am I that I should go to the Pharaoh to bring the Israelites out of Egypt? Who am I, God? I'm nobody. Verse 13, Moses says to God, suppose I go to the Israelites and I say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. And they ask me, well, what's his name? Well, what do I say then? See, God, I don't know what to say. I'm not really good at this stuff. Chapter 4, verse 1. What if they don't believe me, God, or listen to me? And they said, the Lord didn't appear to you. What if they just don't buy it? There's a high chance that they won't follow me. They won't believe me. Who am I to say this? Verse 10 of chapter 4. Moses says to the Lord, oh, Lord, I've never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you've spoken to your servant. I'm slow of speech and tongue. I don't have the gifts for this. I didn't have it before I started following you. I don't have it now. I'm not gifted for this, God. You've got to find somebody else who's better than I am. Chapter 5, verses 22. Moses, he goes and does some stuff, and things get worse, and he comes back to the Lord. He says, Lord, why have you brought trouble on these people? Is this why you sent me? Ever since I went to Pharaoh and spoke in your name, he's brought trouble upon this people, and you've not rescued your people at all. This is not working out, God. This is not working out at all. Chapter 6, verse 9. He comes in and he says, Moses reports things that God told him to say to the Israelites, but they didn't listen to him because of their discouragement and cruel bondage. You see, God, they have no interest in you. You're asking me to lead a people who have no interest in you because their situation is so bad? I'm not the right leader for this. Chapter 14, after he leads them through some things, he comes back in verse 12, and the Israelites say to him, didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. And Moses answers the people, don't be afraid, stand firm. So hard things come, and they're just complaining at Moses. And Moses is going, God, this plan is not working. And it must be because I'm not a good leader. I'm not the right person. Chapter 17, verses 3 and 4. He begins to do some things. And in chapter 17, the people were thirsty for water there. And they grumble against Moses. They say, why did you bring us up out of Egypt to make us and our children and livestock die of thirst? Then Moses cries out to the Lord, what am I to do with these people? They're about to kill me. You see, God, this doesn't work. I'm not the right guy. I'm not the right leader. You see, that Moses is always crying about something. Some of you got that. But I have to wonder how many days that Moses laid in his bed thinking, really? Is this really worth it? I told you, God, I wasn't the right person to lead these people. I'm not a leader. Is anything really ever going to change in these people? Have you ever been there? You ever been in a place with a business, a relationship, a situation, a child? Nothing's ever going to change in them, no matter how much I want it for them. A teacher that you want to change, a financial situation that you're trying to get your family out of. No matter how hard you work and lead, it just doesn't seem to be getting any better. I'll bet some of you have been there. And guess what? 99% of you are going to go there again this year. Happy New Year, Lake Forest. Isn't that awesome? You're going to go through that again this year. But the question is, how are you going to lead through that? And how are you going to lead others that God invites you to? Changes that seem to get worse before they get better. Changes that seem to make people that trust you mad at you. Changes that you want more than they really want. Changes that once you finally get a person moving forward, something else is thrown into it and just hiccups the whole process again. See, I want to say something to you that I want you to memorize this morning. And I want you to hold on to this. Here's the statement. I will be with you. You stay with me. We will worship together. Say that with me. I will be with you. You stay with me. We will worship together. Say it again. I will be with you. You stay with me. We will worship together. Now, because there's a 99% chance that someone close to you is going to go through a change they need you to lead them through this year, I want you to turn to the person closest to you and say, I will be with you. You stay with me. We will worship together. Say it. Go ahead. Feels kind of weird, doesn't it? When you are leading someone, now some of you are talking, I just told you to say these three things. When you're leading someone through change this year, I want you to remember this. I will be with you. You stay with me. We will worship together. This comes out of Exodus chapter 3, verse 12. And I'm going to unpack the first part of this, I will be with you. Then we're going to do something together that helps illustrate that and live that in our lives. Then I'm going to come back and I'll preach on the last two parts after that. But hear these words in Exodus chapter 3, verse 12. God said to Moses, I will be with you. You see, God has just told Moses about this amazing change that he's about to bring in the life of the Israelites, in the life of his people. And Moses, he says, I am going to use you to lead them. And I need you to know that I will be with you. Now, I don't know about you guys, but if you've ever gone through a hard change, if you've gone through something difficult in your life, or you're leading somebody else, you're walking beside somebody else, it is really comforting to know that God is with me. You see, when great and exciting things are about to happen in somebody's life, it's easy to conclude that God is with them. They just got an amazing job promotion and a raise. Man, God took care of us. Or you just got an A on an extremely hard course. The Lord was with me. You just won the lottery. God has heard our prayers. The San Francisco 49ers all knew last week God was with them. The Seattle Seahawks and Denver Broncos, they're going to know God is with them this weekend. Sorry, 49ers. But it's much easier to know that God is with you when things are going well. But when my friend is battling cancer, when another friend of mine loses his 21-year-old son, when a couple loses their unborn child, and a friend's family cannot for the life of them get out of a financial pitfall, I got to tell you, it's very comforting as I lead and walk with these people to know that God is with me. I need to know that God is with me. But having God with me, it just doesn't mean what I think it means sometimes. And Moses is learning this as God is using him to lead the Israelites. Moses says to God, who am I to lead the people? And God says, I am with you. It is never about you making the change. I'm just asking you to lead them as I change them. Moses says, I'm not qualified for this. God says, I am with you. It is never about your abilities and your skills. It is about me. I have made you. I will use you and use your gifts that I made to lead them. Moses says they're not changing. It's getting worse. And God says, I am with you. It's never in your timing. This is my timing. And Moses says, but it's not working like I imagined it. And God says, I am with you. It's never your plan. This is my plan. I need you to know, Moses, that I'm with you. You see, when we follow the promise that God is with us, that's all that we're promised, is that he is with us. And in his witness with us, it is never about us changing people. It's never about our skills and abilities. It's never about our timing. It's never about our plan. It is about God being with us. And this is really, really hard to learn. But I believe that's why God invites us sometime to lead others through change. Because as we lead others through change, we begin to figure out that it is way more important that God is just with me. In leading others through change, he is even changing us. He wants us so deeply to know it is enough that I am with you. I believe it's the number one reason why he calls us, a lot of people, into parenting. Parenting. When I want my kids to change and I think that my parenting is all about them, God says, no, your parenting is way more about you and what I'm doing in you than what I'm doing in your child. And I will change you as you lead your children. You see, Jesus told his followers in Matthew 13, many prophets and righteous people, they long to see what you see, but they didn't see it, and to hear what you hear, but they didn't hear it. You see, Moses had God with him, doing spectacular things right in front of him. And as amazing as the burning bush was, it pales to knowing that Jesus is the Savior. As spectacular as the parted waters of the Red Sea was, it pales in comparison to the Son of God dying and being raised from the dead. As comforting as hearing the voice of God was, it pales in knowing that he lives in those that confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, that he died, that he rose from the dead, and in his Spirit he lives within us. God is with us. Moses longed to see and to hear and to know what you and I see and hear and know. He would have easily said, take the Red Sea, take the pillars of fire. I long to know the Savior. And that is why the communion table is so important. It's a reminder to all of us that our sins are forgiven. We don't have to hold on to bricks and slavery any longer. We don't have to stay in slavery. God is with us. So we're going to pause in our sermon today, and we're going to reflect on the promise that God is with us by receiving communion. As our worship team begins to guide and lead us, I want to ask you, if you still have your brick from the very first week, you've just not been able to let go of that, today could be a great time to do that. If you're here today, you're a spiritual explorer, you're a skeptic, God is saying to you, I want to be with you. And he's asking this morning, would you let me be with you? And so maybe today in taking communion for the first time is your way of saying, I want to be with you too, God. I believe that Jesus is your son. I believe he died. I believe he rose. And today I take communion confessing that. Would you be with me? This morning the table is open for those who have said, yes, I want to follow Jesus. I believe that he is the Savior. I believe what Moses longed to know. Let your hearts right now be still. Would you bow? And would you just know that God is with you? Part 2. Here's part 2 for us. Will you say the statement with me again? I am with you. You stay with me. We will worship together. Okay, you've not memorized it yet. Y'all, just a few of you saying it. I am with you. You stay with me. We will worship together. Now, I've led lots of people, lots of situations, lots of change in other people's lives. And the number one question I ask all the time is, God, is this really you? Is it really you that is sending me to help lead this change in a person's life? I need to know, God, that this really is you. Would you give me a sign? Give me a sign, God, that this is you. I need a burning bush, something like Moses had. I need to hear your voice like Moses. Maybe I need to see waters that part. Maybe I need to see a pillar of fire going before me. Somehow, some way, I need a sign. Would you give me a sign that this is you? Every year around October, our elders, we begin to listen and to talk about for a couple of months, what is the Lord calling us to the next year? What is the financial specifically? What is our budget that we believe the Lord is calling us to for the next year? And so we spend a couple of months just talking and praying and listening, hoping for a sign that God would give us that this is the money, this is the budget number for the next year. And I want you to know, it is really, really hard. It's really hard to sit in a room with all these guys and gal and just talking about what is it that God is calling us to? What are the changes at Lake Forest that He would want? And it gets even harder as you get to the end of a year and you begin to see a deficit situation. And you start going back and wonder, okay, did we hear the Lord correctly? Did He really say that? And then thoughts like, well, maybe we need to start cutting all of our spending. Maybe we need to think about some positions if we had to let them go, that what we have to do if we don't meet budget. Maybe we need to guilt the church body. We need to pass that offering gene pocket one more time because we believe you can give one more dollar in doing all that. You see, all those thinkings start going into our head. Maybe we made a bad decision about an addition or purchasing a piece of equipment. Some of this has been the discussion around our elder meetings on Tuesday mornings for our elders the last couple of months of this year 2013. And I'm telling you this because it is really hard sometimes to know that you've actually heard the Lord correctly in an area in your life. It is really difficult sometimes to know that, God, this really is you. Would you give me a sign? I just need a sign. You see, Moses wanted a sign too. Evidently, the talking burning bush just wasn't enough for him. See, that Moses is hard-headed. And here's the sign that God gives Moses. Here's the verse. God said, I will be with you. And this will be a sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. Now, I'm not sure about you guys, but I'm thinking burning bush way better. God, you're telling me that I won't know that this was you until after I have led the people out of Egypt? No. I need something before we go on this route. I need to know this is you before we leave, not at the other end of it. And God says, no, you don't get this sign until you get to the other side and we stand on this mountain and we worship together. Moses, you won't know that it was me until you're obedient to what I'm telling you to do in leading these people. And after you're obedient, we'll worship right here together. You won't get to see my power, all the things that I can do, unless you're willing to be obedient to the simple promise that I am with you. I made you a promise. You don't need a sign until we get to the other side. But God, who am I to lead them? This is not about you, Moses. This is about me. Do you know who I am? Yeah, God, but what if they don't believe me? They won't believe you. But I'm with you. Stay with me. Yeah, but what if it takes a really long time? It will. It won't happen in the time frame that you think. I am with you. Stay with me. Yeah, but what if they complain and they're upset? Man, they're going to bicker in ways you cannot even imagine. But I am with you. Stay with me. But God, what if it gets worse and it doesn't work like I thought? It will get worse. It will not work like you think. But I am with you. Stay with me. You see, Moses, when you stay with me, it is all about you trusting. Moses, this is about if you trust my promise to be with you or not. Do you trust that? When you stay with me, it is always about you obeying. When things get harder or the change in a person's life just isn't happening quick enough, we tend to want to alienate ourselves from people, or we want to just drop it all together. We lose interest in the ways of God. We think it doesn't work because God's not giving me what I want in the timing that I want. And so we think that we're horrible leaders. And we conclude, then, see, this wasn't right. I didn't hear the Lord's voice correctly. When all along, God is simply telling us, stay obedient. Know that I'm with you. Keep leading. Keep going. Don't give up. Why? Because when you stay with me, it is always about my faithfulness. You see, signs come after we finish. Leading is about believing the promise of God more than the sign. Signs show up after completion, so we want the end before we even begin to move. Or we believe that promises a lot of times can be broken, and we're scared to move just in case God's going to break his promise. And ultimately, our question is if we trust God's faithfulness or not. That's the biggest question. Do you trust that God will be faithful? Do you believe that he is with you? Enough to stay obedient and stay with him. See, moving through change and leading others through change is about remembering the faithfulness of God. One of the ways that we remember the faithfulness of God here at our church is this book right here. This is our storybook. On the last week of our Welcome 101 class, everyone who joins, they tell their story on the last week. It's the story of God's faithfulness in their life. And they give us a copy, and your stories, many of your stories sits in this book. It sits in our front lobby. And often I'll go up into our front lobby and I just open this book and I read the stories of God's faithfulness. When I wonder if God's going to come through, I read the stories over and over and over. He has come through. These are your stories. These are God's stories of faithfulness. This is why Moses was to tell the people, this is God, the father of Abraham, of Isaac, of Jacob. He is your God now, and he will come through. A couple of weeks before Christmas, my wife and I, a decision I led us through, we made a financial decision that we knew we couldn't necessarily afford to make. But we just believed that God was calling us to financially hook someone else up in a way that would really love on them in a way that no one has ever loved them before. We knew as a family we'd take a pretty big hit from that. But we also always have known as a family that it is God who provides for our every need. And we just believed that God was telling us, do this for this person, for this family. And so we did it. Do you know what's happened since that time? Here's some things that have happened since that time of following God's voice. My son's car was wrecked. We had some unexpected medical things to happen, and that meant a lot of new medical bills. My truck radiator, it went out. I replaced it. Then the spark plugs went out. Then the oxygen sensor went out. No lie, this morning, my truck would not start. And so my wife in her pajamas had to drive me here this morning. And even in these last 4 weeks, we found out that our 11-year-old dog has cancer. You know, since following God's voice, our life has been nothing but a country song. And I'm going, God, really? Could you not just let this 98 Ford Ranger just purr like a cat? And God's like, dude, I can split the Red Sea, I can raise people from the dead, but you're asking me to do the impossible now. But I keep hoping. And you know what automatically goes through my head? I'm the one that suggested this financial decision for my family. Did I hear the Lord's voice correctly? Do you know why that goes through my head? Because hard changes are happening. And when changes in our life happen and they're hard, we automatically go to, well, this must not have been the Lord's voice. But every morning I wake up, God says, I am with you. Stay with me. We will worship together. You've heard me correctly. Stay with me, and we're going to worship. Here's the conclusion to the Lake Forest God story. This past Tuesday morning, as our elders gathered, we celebrated the Lord's faithfulness. Over a year ago, we spent months just talking about and thinking about, Lord, where are you leading us? What is the budget number for the year 2013? And we believe that the Lord was telling us in 2012, for the first time in Lake Forest's history, that we're to trust Him for an over $2 million budget. And we felt like that's what the Lord was calling us to. We celebrated this Tuesday because through your faithfulness, exactly what we believed would happen, God provided in 2012. You should clap for that. But I'm going to tell you, it wasn't easy. Because there are times when you want to question and wonder. But every dime that the Lord spoke a year and a half ago to us came through. Because it's not about what we do and all that. It's about us just being obedient and knowing that He is with us. And the way that we know for sure that God is with us is if we stay with Him, and then we will worship together. And so on Tuesday, that's what we did. We sat as elders and we just worshiped the faithfulness of God. And that's how we're going to end our service today. I want you to know that God is with you. I'm challenging you. Stay with Him, Lake Forest, and you will worship. As our worship team comes out to lead us in our time of worship, I just want to ask you to prepare your hearts for a time of just remembering the Lord's faithfulness. And I'm going to let Moses' words, after he led the Egyptians out, after he led the Israelites out of Egypt, I want his words to just guide us a little bit in our worship time. So would you just bow your heads? Would you prepare your hearts to just worship? Allow Moses' words to guide your worship. I will sing to the Lord. He is highly exalted. The horse and its rider, He's hurled into the sea. The Lord, He's my strength and my song. He's become my salvation. He is my God. I will praise Him. My Father's God. I will exalt Him. The Lord, He is a warrior. The Lord is His name. Pharaoh's chariots, his armies, He's hurled into the sea. The best of Pharaoh's officers drowned in the Red Sea. The deep waters, they've covered them. They sank to the depths like a stone. Your right hand, O Lord, was majestic in power. Your right hand, O Lord, shattered the enemy. In the greatness of your majesty, you threw down those who opposed you. You unleashed burning anger. It consumed them like a stubble. Who among the gods is like you, O Lord? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in glory, working wonders? Let's worship this same God who is faithful to you.